Pierde la esperanza.
No, la verdad que no. No, no pierdo la esperanza.
Sí, le decía que yo agarro fortaleza de historias como las suyas, de mamás como usted, mi madre, mujeres fuertísimas y me inspiran muchísimo. Yo no le traigo el día de hoy flores, pero sí le traigo buenas noticias. Nos dieron respuesta en su caso y
No me digas.
es positivo.
Ay, Dios mío.
Tiene la fecha para entrar mayo 20. Entonces, felicidades.
Ay, Dios.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Dulce Garcia. I'm the Executive Director for Border Angels. And the clip you just saw is of Rocio Rebollar, one of our guests. Should be joining us in a few minutes. We'll be talking a little bit about her story as the mother of a second lieutenant in the military. She was deported. And the clip shows when we give her the good news that she's going to come back home. Spoiler alert, she's home and she's going to be joining us from San Diego. And I want to go ahead and introduce Robert Vivar. Robert Vivar, our other guest, is an activist and co-director of Unified U.S. Deported Veterans Resource Center. Although he's not a veteran himself, he's part of the military family, complying with the selective service for the draft at the age of 18, and his brother, son, and grandson all having served or presently serving in the military. He lived in the U.S. from the age of 6 and was deported decades later. Since his deportation, he has dedicated his life to helping others in need, especially deported U.S. military veterans, with the integration into the community as well as obtaining rightfully earned benefits while searching for legal remedies for their repatriation. With deported mothers of U.S. citizen children, separated families, migrants fleeing violence, and persecution. He presently works for Via Internacional, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating sustainable communities through community development programs. He's also the core leader for Friends of Friendship Park, co-founder and vice president of Veterans for Peace, part of the steering committee of Military Families Speak Out, and legislative coordinator for the Leave No One Behind mural project. Thank you so much for finding time to be with us with all of these projects. I know you're very active, Robert. We very much appreciate your time. Bienvenido.
Thank you very much for the invite, Dulce. It's a pleasure to be here with you and be part of the incredible work that you have been carrying out for many years in the San Diego area in support of our community. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, Robert. I want to encourage people to visit our website. It is here. We're going to be posting links also to the organizations that Robert is leading. And we'll go ahead and get started. For the followers, for those of us that don't know much about this issue, we're here very much to learn. I'm really excited to learn from you, Robert, about what is going on more recently in order to protect our military families. Not many people know that the U.S. Does not grant automatic citizenship for active military members or their families. And when speaking to some people, they were not even aware that there are veterans that served in the U.S. Military and have been deported. So we're very excited to learn more from you, Robert. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to you.
Thank you. Yes, you know, and lately in the last few years, there's been a lot of awareness that has been created regarding the issue of deporting U.S. military veterans. However, even though it seems like there has been quite a lot of awareness that has been raised in the last few years, we're still finding that the majority of the population is still not aware of this injustice of deporting those that were willing to give their life to defend the Constitution of the United States. Therefore, it is very important that we continue our activism, our movement, to continue to raise awareness, and through that raising of awareness to prompt our elected officials to continue looking for legislative measures to be able to correct this issue. a lot of people are wondering, how is it that those that have served in the U.S. military can be deported? Some of the questions come up are, well, weren't they legal? And that's one of the biggest myths. In order for you to serve in the U.S. military, you had to have legal status, either legal permanent residence or have a work permit. um, that thing that you had to be a citizen was a big myth. Probably what brought this upon the thought that you had to be a citizen is because on many occasions when our recruits were looking to enlist in the U.S. military, they were actually promised U.S. citizenship by the recruiters, indicating that just by enlisting into the U.S. military, that they would automatically become U.S. citizens. On many occasions, they were never informed that there was still a process that they needed to follow. They needed to apply for citizenship and go through the whole process. On the other hand, we have found that many of our deported veterans actually begun that process while in the military. And for one reason or another, they were shipped around from base to base, and their documentation never followed them. So they, you can imagine, you begin your process, you initiate your process, fill out your citizenship application, you go to your initial interview, you get your biometrics taken, and you're waiting for your final interview, and all of a sudden you get shipped out to another base or even out of the country to a combat zone. The last thing on your mind is, if you were required to complete that last interview or not. And on many occasions, their thought was, I haven't heard anything back. Everything must be okay. I must be a U.S. citizen until they come home. And as many veterans do, that they have problems integrating back into civilian life, run afoul of the law. And, the difference between a non-citizen veteran and a citizen veteran is that a citizen veteran will, pay for their mistake. And after that, they'll go home and redo their life. A non-citizen veteran, after paying for whatever mistake they incurred in the legal system, they're handed another punishment, which we can consider double jeopardy, by being put into removal proceedings and deported, exiled to a country that perhaps they were born in, but a country that is completely foreign to them because they left at a very young age. Uh, a lot of these issues came about from the signing of the 1996 immigration reform bill by Bill Clinton. Prior to 1996 immigration reform bill, in order for a legal permanent resident, especially somebody serving in the military, to be deported, you had to have committed a very heinous crime, something incredibly major. However, after 1996, it widened the scope of deportable crimes so that any kind of crime that received a sentence of 365 days or more was an automatic aggravated felony, regardless what type of crime or a mistake it was. But it was an aggravated felony, and that was grounds for automatic removal. It took all discretion away from immigration judges to consider the person's longtime um, residence in the U.S., family ties, having been a very productive, positive member of their community, having served in the military, having siblings that served in the military. All discretion was taken away from judges so that if they wanted to consider the person's military service, they were not allowed to. Um, those injustices to this day exist, and there has been a little bit of leadway here recently that we can also discuss here in a moment or so.
Yes, thank you, Robert, for that. And for those of us that practice immigration law, know these forms are very complicated and they don't get easier. They only get longer. Now we're over 20 pages just for the naturalization application alone, plus the waiver forms. So it's a very complicated process. People assume that obtaining citizenship involves filling out a postcard, sending it, and then receiving your citizenship. But it's quite a process to navigate, and certainly when serving the military, I can't even imagine what it's like to come back from combat and then have to deal with paperwork like this. I mean, I can't imagine that that would be on the top of your list, having undergone through what you go through in service, and I know you're very familiar with the psychological toll and the effect that it has on families to go through this prosecutorial and prison pipeline into deportation. And I'm sure you have some stories that you carry with you in the work that you do. I know you work very closely with families, and you hear about what toll it takes on families as well on both sides of the border, seeing that their family member is then deported even after serving in the military.
Yes, that is correct. I've been doing this kind of work with deported veterans for about 7.5 years now, and of course, I have uh, heard many stories. I have cried with many of our guys as they have endured their struggle. Um, we've heard a lot of stories from their family members also what it means to them, and a lot of people will come back and say, well, you know, uh, they committed a crime. They deserve to be deported, and that's one of the biggest injustices that you can assess on somebody that, like I said earlier, was willing to give their life to defend the Constitution of the United States. Most people uh, are either not aware or uh, they have not, been very well versed in who some of our deported veterans are. And if you come into our office and you view some of the pictures on the walls, uh, you see pictures of kids, young men, 17, 18, 19 years old. Um, your next door neighbor, all American kid, very naive, very wholesome at that point, willing to give, their life to defend, the country that has adopted them. And when they join the military, they go to a very rigorous training program. And we got to understand what is it that training program teaches our recruits. It teaches them to be aggressive. It teaches them to be violent. It teaches them straight out to kill, to survive. And many of them are asked to go to another country and kill in the name of defense of the Constitution of the United States. And many of them have to do that. That's their job. Those are their orders. What sometimes is not understood is that when these young men come back home, we expect them to come back and integrate back into civilian life as that wholesome young man that left one day. And that's a furthest from the truth. That young man has been exposed um, to incredible things that we can only think about. We cannot even imagine because not being veterans, we have not lived them. Only they have. Uh, and when they come back, they're not assessed um, mentally, physically wise, of how they're going to be able to integrate back into civilian life. And many of them have trouble integrating back into civilian life. And the only way they know how to deal with it is the way they've been taught, by being aggressive, by being violent, resorting to self medicating, trying to take care of themselves on their own. And thus, of course, resulting in behavior that gets them into trouble and gets them removed from the country again that they swore to defend. Um, that's an incredible injustice that occurs to them, and that is something that we need to continue to raise the awareness so that consideration can be given to them, and we can look to different ways to bring them back home, um, where they belong.
Yeah, and you talked about promises that are made in the recruiting process. One of those promises is to those kids, even when they're U.S. citizens, if they have an undocumented parent, that if they join the military, there's a possibility that their family member will remain here in the U.S. And that was certainly the case in Rocio's case. We played the video earlier of Rocio Rebollar. Gracias por unirse a la plática, Rocio. But that was a promise that was made to her family and other families, that there is an avenue for them if you join the military, that perhaps your family member will be able to stay with you, whether it's a spouse or a parent, um, through that service, active military service. And unfortunately, in Rocio's case, it failed her. On January 2nd of 2020, Rocio Rebollar presented herself to Immigration Custom Enforcement, also known as ICE, while we were holding a press conference and a rally outside with her family. Dozens of press covering this nationwide and international attention. Several pleadings went to the administration to not deport Rocio, because Rocio is very much an exemplary resident in San Diego. She had at that point a successful business. She worked long days, sometimes 16-hour days, working to pay for her mortgage because she's a homeowner, paying taxes, had no criminal history. She's the mother of 3 children, grandmother to 3 grandchildren, and despite all of her attempts to have deferred action in her case, because her son is today now a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army, Rocio was still deported that same day, that same morning. And we connected with Rocio in Tijuana. And I wanted to connect Robert and Rocio in Tijuana, thinking, Robert has support in Tijuana, and Rocio probably is struggling after the deportation. And I think that's when at that lunch when our lives, all three of our lives were transformed from there on. It hasn't been the same since then, but le quiero dar la oportunidad a Rocio. Primero, bienvenida y muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros. Me gustaría saber de su perspectiva, Rocío, y le traduzco con mucho gusto, sobre su historia. ¿Qué mensaje usted le daría a la gente que nos está siguiendo, que nos está escuchando?
Pues primero que nada, ¿verdad? Agradezco mucho el apoyo de tu organización y de la de Robert. Y pues el mensaje que yo les daría a las personas que están oyendo, que de verdad es algo muy doloroso lo que vive uno como familia, porque no nomás se afecta a la persona a la que ah, sacan, sino toda la familia. En realidad fue un sufrimiento muy, muy grande para todos en general, y sobre todo pues a mi hijo, que estando en la militar no pudo verme ni visitarme ni vernos físicamente durante todo el tiempo que yo estuve fuera. Se afectó obviamente mi economía enormemente, porque yo era el support de mi casa, ¿verdad? Era pues gracias a que trabajaba tanto, pues pude darles educación a los tres, educación universitaria. Se dice fácil, pero de verdad que es un muy, muy grande esfuerzo. Fue trabajar horas y horas, a veces los 7 días de la semana, y de repente te quitan todo, te dejan sin nada, y fue algo de verdad, algo demasiado doloroso. Y el mensaje que yo quisiera darles es que de verdad ya no vuelva a pasar, o que no pase más esto con otras familias, y que no pasen por todo lo que nosotros hemos pasado, porque fue un sufrimiento muy grande. Yo le doy gracias a Dios que estoy aquí de regreso, y gracias a ti y a Robert, que me apoyaron bastante para que yo pudiera estar de regreso en mi casa. Apenas, como quien dice, me estoy reponiendo de pues, de todo, emocionalmente, físicamente, económicamente. La familia quedó devastada.
Okay, voy a intentar traducirle sus palabras, Rocio. First of all, Rocio would like to thank Robert's organization, God, as usual, and Border Angels, for the support that she has received. As a family, all of the family was impacted by the deportation. The entire family, not just her. Um, Specifically, it was difficult on her son, who was in the military and was unable to visit her in Tijuana. The impact was felt financially as well. She was a provider for her children, including paying for their education, including the university studies. She was self sustaining, and the deportation had an impact on that. All of a sudden, their lives were changed. Everything was taken away from them. This has been really painful, really hurtful all around, and affecting the entire family. So she's hoping, and her message is that this is the last family that has to undergo this pain. That there's no more mothers that go through this, no more families that go through what Rocio went through. So she's really thankful to Robert and to Border Angels for helping her come back home. But she knows there's many other families that have and are undergoing through what she went through, um, and this needs to stop. So that's the message that she would like for people to take away, is that this kind of pain needs to stop, because emotionally and physically, even after returning home, she still feels the impact from that deportation. Les contaba Rocío cuando fuimos a almorzar en Tijuana, y quería introducirla a Robert para ver si había una manera que él la apoyara en Tijuana. Pero en ese almuerzo no nos dábamos cuenta de lo que pasaría después. Afortunadamente usted confió en nosotros y nos contó su historia, lo que estaba pasando usted en México. Eso le permitió llenar una solicitud para volver a entrar y regresar a casa. Pero creo que es muy claro decir que no pudo entrar porque la militar le estaba dando la oportunidad. No fue porque la administración de Biden en sí había considerado que usted era familiar del militar, sino por esta aplicación de asilo que usted sometió recientemente.
Y porque lamentablemente am, estuvo en riesgo mi vida 2 veces en México y la verdad uno vive callado y se calla porque no sabe uno qué hacer ni qué puertas tocar y no quiere uno decirle a sus familiares acá para no ponerlos en riesgo.
Yes. So in that lunch, Rocio was trusting enough to inform us and let us know that in Mexico, her life had been placed at risk, and she was undergoing very difficult situations in Mexico, and she was afraid of telling her family here in the U.S. for concern that they would worry about her. She didn't want to have her family worry about all the things that she was undergoing in Mexico, and she was kind enough to trust Robert and me with her stories. We were able to fill in a request for an exemption to Title 42, which right now is still in effect, closing the border to all asylum seekers. But Rocio was able to have this opportunity to come back into the U.S. so she can present her claim to asylum. And the video that we played in the very beginning shows when we gave her the news on Mother's Day, just this year, 2021. We gave her the news that she was coming back home, and you can hear in her voice the emotion and the relief from what she was undergoing. These are some of the images. This is Robert accompanying Rocio the day that she was about to cross. No sé si uno de ustedes dos quiere hablar de estas imágenes. Um, en esos momentos yo ya estaba aquí de vuelta en Estados Unidos, no la pude acompañar, pero con muchísimo gusto la estábamos esperando. So that image is of Robert accompanying Rocio at the port of entry as she's checking in with immigration officials to come back home. And I was on the other side of the border with her family, waiting with great anticipation her return to the U.S., which was very emotional to see and witness. And we're so lucky to not only have met you, Rocio, but to be part of this. It's a success story, but ultimately there's a lot of pain that you went through and that could have been avoided if military families were protected. Todo este dolor, la verdad que nos impacta a todos porque fue muy necesario todas las cosas que usted sufrió ahí en México se pudieron haber evitado. Si es que la militar en realidad protege a las familias militares, esto se pudo haber evitado. So I would like to ask Robert some good news about what's happening on the ground to push forward to protect military families. Because, like Rocio was saying, we can't allow this to continue. We can't allow family members and deported veterans to go through this because it impacts really all of us, including the people that are left behind in the U.S. Todo lo que sufrió Rocio en México en realidad pudo haber sido evitado.
Absolutely, Dulce. And, you know, uh, uh, for our part, it was incredibly emotional, and we're just real grateful to God that He gave us that opportunity to be part of this team that was able to put together uh, this process for Rocio to be reunited with her family in San Diego. As uh, also a chapter of Military Families Speak Out, it was very emotional and rewarding to participate in that process. For 7.5 years, I've been working mainly with deported veterans, and I never even thought that an opportunity would come up at one point where a military family, in particular, the mom of an active duty intelligence officer, um, be presented so that we could be part of that awesome team and process that enabled her to return home to the U.S. And we're very excited right now, Rocio and Dulce, and we're very excited because on July 2nd, President Biden made an announcement uh, issuing a directive to the Homeland Security Secretary as well as the VA Secretary for them to start putting together a process to review the cases of veterans that may be in deportation proceedings or military families in deportation proceedings, as well as those that have been deported. A process to review fully their cases to assess if there was any inconsistencies, and not only assess any inconsistencies, but see any alternatives that may be available for them to cancel removal proceedings, or in the case of those that have been deported, to be able to return to the United States under a permanent legal residence, which could convert into a U.S. citizenship, and on many occasions, even as a U.S. citizen. Now, we are very excited about it. However, we're not going to hold our breath to it because even though the announcement was made, until it actually is carried out and until we are given a process that our deported veterans and military families must follow to receive this relief, will we be able to say we can rest perhaps a little bit. In the meantime, we need to continue pressing this issue. And since it has gained such momentum, we need to continue with different actions so this momentum does not die down, so it continues and it reaches its goal to repatriate our deported veterans and military families. That's why, actions, we need to continue the push, calling Congress, calling senators. Um, we're also part of the Leave No One mural project, which on August 21st, we have another mural installation, which is going to be at the Veteran of Foreign War Post, Don Diego, Veteran of Foreign War Post 7420 in Barrio Logan. This is a very significant um, event uh, for the unveiling of the deported veteran mural. This is going to serve to continue the advocacy and the awareness and the momentum so that the Biden administration, the Department of Homeland Security, the Veteran Administration do not forget their promises and their directives that were issued to them. We need to continue that pressure so that this injustice can be corrected and we can get our deported veterans and our military families home.
Thank you, Robert. We'll definitely be there in Barrio Logan, August 21st, this Saturday at 10:30 a.m. We'll make sure to support this and other events. There are links. The links are going to be in our social media as well, and we'll be putting links to your different organizations so that people can continue to support these efforts. You mentioned something about not having hope for or not expecting to get this kind of result on many cases. Rocio had heard that she wasn't going to be able to file for 10 years to then hopefully be able to apply to return back to the U.S. But Rocio never gave up. Rocio siempre tuvo fe, siempre decía, me dijeron 10 años, pero yo voy a regresar a casa. she was sure that she would be returning home. And
Yes.
this mechanism for her to return, this limited window that opened up, it's now closed. But it was not around when Rocio heard you are going to be deported and you're going to have to wait 10 years in order to file anything to hopefully come back someday. And a lot of families have heard that, deportation still happening. But I'm glad all of these efforts are happening. Thank you for letting us know, Robert. We'll be taking questions if anybody has any questions that they want to share with us for our panelists. There was a comment about deportation not being new. Even thousands of Mexican citizens from San Diego and Los Angeles were deported as a result of the Repatriation Act of 1929. Um, and that is certainly the truth. There are still deportations happening every day. But the military and in the recruitment process specifically, there are promises that are made that should be maintained when a young person decides to go into the military. And I say young person because there's also women, right? I know during the mural installation happening August 21st, a story of a woman, Laura, will be highlighted at that event. So I can't wait to hear more about her story at that point. Quisiera darle oportunidad a Rocio a añadir cualquier cosa que le gustaría decir.
Sí, pues primero que nada, pues seguimos luchando porque haz de cuenta que yo le doy gracias a Dios porque estoy aquí, ¿verdad? Pero yo soy una familia o una madre o un padre de muchos que estamos en esta situación que no tenemos esa seguridad de tener una residencia permanente, de sentirnos seguros porque el permiso, el Deferred to Action que le otorgan a las familias militares es solamente por 2 años y lo que estamos luchando y lo que estamos tratando es que ellos traten de darle esa seguridad a las familias de sus militares que están de alguna manera o ciertamente um, dando su vida por este país, por la seguridad mía y tuya y por la seguridad de todos que estamos aquí. Ellos todos los días están arriesgando su vida y creo que una de las cosas importantes es que ellos sientan que su familia está protegida y de alguna manera con el Deferred to Action no tenemos esa protección, solamente tenemos, oh sí, estás aquí, yo te permito estar aquí, pero no tienes nada. Entonces, queremos luchar. Yo quisiera pues agradecer primero que nada, ¿verdad? Que me permitieron regresar, aunque sea con una visa humanitaria y poder contar la historia, porque en realidad pudo haber sido otra historia, pudo haber sido una historia totalmente diferente, cruda, de desaparición, de que nunca me hubieran podido encontrar. Yo le doy gracias a Dios que en el intento de secuestro que tuve, de verdad yo pensé que iba a morir, que no iba a poder volver a ver a mi familia y de repente Dios hizo un milagro en ese momento y me dejaron. Entonces, fue algo muy drástico y quisiera de verdad empujar a que luchemos, a que sigamos luchando y apoyando a la organización de Ángeles Border, a la organización de United US Deportation de Robert, porque están luchando con nosotros y cada uno de todos somos muchos. Si todos opinamos, si todos aportamos y si todos ayudamos, vamos a poder luchar para que haya ese cambio para todas esas familias, aunque yo soy una, pero como yo hay muchos y hay miles.
Okay. So Rocio would like to highlight that this is just one family of many, many families that undergo this kind of pain. She would like to have everyone protected, all of these families in the military protected and safe from deportation, because deferred action is not a path to citizenship. It's only for 2 years, and she would like to continue in this fight, even though she's allowed back in the U.S., the fight's far from over. She at the moment has to continue with her case. She was allowed to come in with this very limited humanitarian parole, but is unable to become a U.S. citizen at the moment. She still has to keep on fighting, and she would like to thank God because she survived. She's a survivor, but it could have all of the incidences that she underwent in Mexico, including an attempted kidnap, could have resulted in losing her life. She could have been disappeared. Her family would have never known about her, and she's very grateful to be alive, but she doesn't want other families to go through what her family has gone through. And she would like all of us, every single one of us, to continue elevating these voices, to stand up, to end this, so that all of these families are fully protected. Y sí tiene muchísima razón, Rocío. A usted le permitieron la entrada, pero no tiene un pasillo a la ciudadanía, entonces usted le va a seguir con su caso, usted le va a seguir peleando, no se ha dado por derrotada, pero sí todavía tiene que continuar con este caso. No ha sido usted protegida de deportación, y no se ha determinado que usted tiene un pasillo a la ciudadanía, entonces um, tiene muchísima razón que las familias deberían de ser protegidas completamente para que no estén enfrentando una deportación también. Thank you so much for that reminder, Rocio. We do have very strong voices, and you do have a lot of support, a lot of people that are engaging our legislators, that are engaging congressional representatives, as Robert was mentioning earlier, pushing the administration to protect these military families. And anything else you would like to mention, Robert?
Just a couple of things. I'm very grateful, Dulce, for the efforts that you in particular led out here in Tijuana, in the border area with our asylum community, because uh, that was how uh, this action came about, to give Rocio the opportunity to come home. But it wasn't only Rocio. There's another gentleman, this one a deported veteran, that fit the the category of a very vulnerable person, that fit the parameters of Title 42 humanitarian parole, which is our own Andres de Leon Rodriguez, 78-year-old Vietnam era veteran, living here in Mexico all alone, uh, you know, victim of a crime, diabetes, was having problems with his memory, walking. I mean, just everything you can imagine. And uh, we were able to, you know, through this great effort, to also bring him the opportunity of humanitarian parole, and able to assist him in getting home. In the picture there, you see our other great collaborator, attorney Ian Sorello with APLA, who processed uh, Andy's humanitarian parole. Um, Shortly after the parole process initiated, Ian was on vacation So Dulce kind of had to step in and continue the process. And finally, Andy was able to be released and is now home in Northern California with his family. He was able to finally see his 98-year-old dad. Uh, he hadn't seen him for about 11 years. He was finally able to meet his grandchildren, who he had never met. And Andy, the only thing he would ever ask for was he wanted to go home because he didn't want to die outside of the country that raised him. He didn't want to die outside of the United States. Well, he's back home, and we hope and we pray that with the Biden announcement that there will be follow through, and Andy can enjoy permanent residence, if not citizenship, in the United States, just like our hopes for Rocio and for all our deported veterans and military families, that they're able to enjoy legal permanent residence, if not citizenship, back in the U.S. And those that should be in removal proceedings, that those removal proceedings be canceled and they be given an opportunity to remain home where they belong with the family. I'm very grateful for the work to be in collaboration with you, Dulce, with Border Angels, with Sean, and I'm just thankful to God that that He has given us this opportunity to work with some great people.
Yes, we're very grateful to the other organizations that are in Tijuana on the ground, um, including AFSC, including Borderline Crisis Center, your organization, tireless work, Ian from Apala. Um, it's really moving to see the impact on families. The ability for Andy to finally hug his grandchildren at home, it's just priceless for us to see Rocio hug her son for the first time. And she was counting, ¿verdad, Rocio? Era un año, creo que 4 meses, 16 días. She had it down
Un
to
año, 4 meses, 18 días.
8 días.
478 días. Sí, sí.
Y 3 horas.
Y 3 horas. Sí.
Yeah, Rocio had it down to the days. She was counting and yearning to hug her son, and we were able to witness that here in the U.S., and that was just priceless. So we want to thank you both for giving us that joy of supporting families like this one. But we do hope that there are no more family separations, and certainly no more military families separated, because you told us today about the impact that it has on both sides of the border. So with that, we'll be sharing the links for everyone to be able to support these efforts to bring back our deported veterans and to stop the separation of families. Con eso, un grande agradecimiento a los dos por todo este trabajo y por permitirnos ser parte de estas historias. And that's all we have for today's talk. I really want to thank all of our followers.
Quiero agregar algo más. Quiero hacer un llamado a toda nuestra comunidad y a todas las personas que tengan acceso a este video, que sigan apoyando económicamente, compartiendo este tipo de historias y este tipo de cosas para que podamos ser una diferencia, como a hoy fue una diferencia para mí y para otras personas que han estado en esa situación, pero si seguimos apoyando y aportando, yo creo que podemos ayudar y hacer más. Así que yo quisiera hacer un llamado a todos que si aportan económicamente con lo que puedan, no sé, hay tantas cosas con tanta necesidad que podemos hacer y hacer un cambio y una diferencia, que de verdad yo quisiera pedirles que piensen un poquito todos y cada uno, de alguna manera, de los que vivimos aquí en el estado de California, hemos sido tocados por alguien, ya sea un amigo, un conocido, un familiar que ha pasado, que tiene esta situación o ha tenido esta situación como la que nosotros hemos vivido. Entonces, si nosotros ayudamos y aportamos, podemos hacer una diferencia, no nomás para cambiar lo que es el estado de California, sino para cambiarlo en todo Estados Unidos.
Okay. Voy a tratar de capturar lo que dijo porque fue muy bien dicho, Rocio. But Rocio made a call to action for all of us to continue supporting these organizations monetarily. She says, you know, every one of us has been impacted in one way or another. We all know of a friend, of a family, a colleague, someone around us that is impacted by these laws that need to be changed, not only to make an impact here in California, but all along the U.S. And so she's making this plea, this call to action for all of us to continue supporting the work to have to end this family separation and keep supporting the work that it really impacts all of us. I apologize. Usted lo dijo mucho mejor, Rocío, muy conmovedor. But I think it's clear in your passion the call to action for all of us to
Ya,
do something about this.
pero esperemos que esto llegue a toda nuestra comunidad latina, que yo sé que lo van a escuchar, a toda la comunidad anglosajona también, que también lo van a escuchar, y esperemos que el llamado sea para todos, porque realmente es algo que si nos unimos, la unión hace la fuerza en esta lucha que estamos librando, porque es para ayudar a muchas, muchas personas, muchas familias.
Sí, creo que con eso nos vamos a despedir, Rocío. A todos los que nos escuchan, ya escucharon. Hay que movernos.
Sí, y nos vemos el 21.
Y nos vemos el 21. Muchísimas gracias de nuevo. Thank you to all of our followers that continue to support us in order for us to keep elevating these voices and this important work. Thank you so much. Hasta la próxima.
Gracias.
Gracias.